Welcome to another episode of the Business of AI podcast. And I'm delighted to be welcoming Fuad Hendricks, who is the co-founder and MD of Hark Consultants. So Fuad, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Tim, great to be here and thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm looking forward to discussing a number of topics around responsible AI and data and AI strategy. But to get started, could you tell us a little bit more about you and how you ended up doing what you're doing today?
Yes, of course. So Fuad Hendricks, as you mentioned, co-founder and MD of Hark Consultants. I think just as a bit of a background of who I am, I started within financial services, looking at broadly business strategy, looking at how we build capabilities to control costs, look at efficiencies, etc., and also looking at how through digital transformation strategies we look at those efficiency constructs and drivers. So that all led to me being involved within digital, and that also led to a path down data and strategy beyond just what data can be and how efficiency can be driven through data, and that's been driving my career and my expertise for where I am at the moment. Also working across the multinational consultancy company within the financial services and helping clients through those industries.
Fantastic.
From a consultant perspective, we focus on data and AI strategy now. The company is born around how we drive efficiency in terms of the overall construct of a business strategy. One is the initial leg was looking at marketing capability strategies, and that was born through Leah starting the company. I, of course, came through when she built a good runway and strategic path for the firm, and bringing in the data and AI capability as an additional offering for the business.
Nice. I love the way there's that sort of symbiotic sort of nature of being able to bring together those two insights there around the data and the consultancy and the financial services and marketing into that very that's a balanced way. But actually, data is a really interesting field in its own right, because I remember, way back, data was kind of seen as quite uncool, quite unsexy, right? It was databases, and in marketing in particular, it was below the line marketing, was database marketing, and then right through the sort of I guess early noughties, it suddenly took off and it became really cool, and that's what everyone was talking about when we got into that digital marketing phase. Suddenly everyone was talking about data. I suppose in the financial services it was always important, right? All of the quant trading, data's always been integral to the financial services, but now it's become the lifeblood of the AI transformation. How have you sort of helped to prepare businesses to really take advantage of their data, and what are the biggest challenges that you see with businesses you're working with?
Yeah, of course. I think, as you're saying, data's just always been there, but in terms of the importance and what it actually means, I don't think people realize the value of data until we got to the last 2 years, and how AI has just accelerated the thinking of, hey, we can't do anything with AI unless we have good data and good data foundations. So I think companies started to realize, obviously, as you're saying, financial services knew the value of what data means, because that's just how the business is run. But learning and looking at customers and organizations, when you look at and understand the data volume that all these companies generate, and looking at what they use and the demand for that data was minuscule in terms of what they could achieve by actually getting to what we call the data value gap. And that's I guess where AI helped accelerate or put a spotlight on that focus areas. And I guess if you look at that, at an enterprise level, data has mostly just been manual. Data has just mostly been in people's heads, tacit knowledge. and we couldn't clearly extract all of that to ensure that that data value can be extracted across the enterprise. And that's the areas of focus where we want to start looking at. If you look to the left of what AI could provide, and AI could provide the benefits to your business, let's understand the left of it, the foundations. How do you set the vision and the construct for getting data into a place where you know it's going to deliver that value? How do you set the organization up for those elements and getting to that state?
Yeah, I've worked in some businesses where we've tried to do transformation projects, or we've tried to bring in new platforms, new CRMs, things like that. And the biggest challenge we faced is the data, right? It's that there's so many different legacy databases that have kind of been munged together. Sometimes you'll see that someone's kind of had a go at trying to standardize the data and try to clean the data up, but actually it's costly, it takes time. And so what you often end up in an enterprise that's been around for more than 5-10 years is just there's all this kind of very munged together data in lots of different formats, and it's messy and horrible. So when you were talking around the sort of the getting the foundations right, that was immediately what came to mind. Now when I was doing that was like 5-10 years ago. I imagine now with some of the tools and services that are powered by AI, that's you're able to get to grips and clean up that data and make it much more interoperable and standardized, quicker, faster, and easier. So is that where you start?
Yeah, of course, and that's quite key, right? The questions we still hear or see is the lack of standardization, as you mentioned, duplication of systems, no clear ownership of what that data is or who manages that data, access to the data, how's it findable, how do you access it, how does it become interoperable, and of course, do we own that data to manage it effectively and create that value? So those are the areas where we find that if we get those foundations right, we're able to help define new products, new services, and that purely helps accelerate that innovation. How do we get to that point where AI and advanced analytics can help you build that new revenue streams, those new business models to achieve the business goals? I think what we need to also get to a point is that data should be part of your bottom line. Data should be an input into how that translates to your bottom line. And by that, I mean getting to a point where we get that chief data officer or chief innovation officer as part of that C-suite with that metric and build that KPI that says, okay, actually getting your data management capabilities, your foundations, etc. That's going to be important, and making it come down from the top makes that narrative so much easier. So people are able to at least adhere to the seriousness of what that data foundation should look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It is so fundamental. It needs to have somebody responsible and accountable in the organization to examine that. We have seen the sort of increased importance of data security, data privacy. Post GDPR now, that's kind of done a lot to sort of improve that. But are you seeing that organizations now are aware of the need to get their data in the right format and the right sort of quality of data in order to take advantage of the new AI technologies that are coming? Maybe that's actually what you're helping them with.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's the realization. And as I'm saying, the last 2 years of AI just exploding onto the scene created that spotlight that made people think differently. Whereas before you could do it in pockets, you could try and do certain AI service offerings, but the scaling on that just didn't happen. So now these days, we help by setting that vision. We help by developing that all those data foundations that needs to be developed, along with that operating model that helps you really make it into a tangible output for what that delivery vehicle should look like. And of course, that then follows with the data realization and the value of that data that helps get you to a point where we realize the value and that North Star definition of where you need to be.
Yeah. So I'm starting to see a bit of a process here, and you maybe have a methodology that you use, but it sounds like almost the first stage is that sort of getting those foundations right, getting the data in the right format. Then the second stage is almost kind of analyzing what you need to do with the data, and how you can, I think you referred to it as the data value gap, identifying where those gaps are. And then I suppose the third stage is kind of like leveraging some of those really powerful technologies, such as AI, to do all the great things that, you know, we're only starting to really get into at the moment. And there's many more use cases coming down. But could you talk us through sort of maybe how you see those phases, and any sort of frameworks or methodology you use with businesses when you're engaging with them?
Yeah, no, for sure. So we've got a strategy framework that we work through. One is just looking at setting that vision, understanding what the maturity levels are within the organization. So that means looking at all the capabilities that might exist, but looking at that, we identify and surface all these areas that need interrogation. So what does that mean? It looks at as I said, setting the vision, making sure everyone's on the same page, ensuring that there is someone responsible for that metric within the business. The second one is looking at your people, understanding what's the talent that you have. Do we need to augment, i.e., train our people? Do we need to get more people in? Do we build up that data literacy for within the organization, ensuring that when we speak about data, everyone knows the value of data and actually what that would translate to, right? The other area is just then when we start looking at the actual enablers, and when I say the actual enablers, I mean the technology that we need to run through, and that would then bring in your tools, your platforms, what you have in place. Do you have a data layer that makes it easier for an enterprise, that when you need to scale your solutions, there's a central way of getting data instead of, I think you touched on it earlier, the mishmash of systems where it's become so interwoven, you're not sure what the source of truth is any longer. So hence why you start building all of these things. We help you with the reference architecture, ensuring that whatever foundational elements or technologies you put in place, we're able to set that foundation with you and ensure that you set up for success moving forward.
I wonder if we could just step back for a moment and just give a definition of what data is, what it includes, because you mentioned then it's important that everyone knows what data is. And I'm conscious that I'm probably, you know, assuming that everyone knows what data is. In my mind, you know, it's not just the numeric data. There's also lots of company-specific data, documents, images that have been kind of codified and brought into data. And increasingly, as we're sort of looking at how we can start to build company-specific sovereign data or data sovereignty, we're thinking about, you know, all of these different types of data become important. So I wonder whether you could just help us with a definition of what data is and give us some examples of the different types of data.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so for example, data as in the definition is just information that you capture from your systems. So you get first-party data, second-party data, third-party data, but I'll touch on first-party data where you're looking at only the information that you have about your services, about your customers, your CRMs, etc., ERPs, all of those. So that's the data that you capture to get to a point for reaching a goal. But within data, it's just data, right? For example, if you have a customer, that's just customer data. Is it really useful? Perhaps. But if you turn that into something that's information, it means that you're going to augment that with different types and different parts of the business as well. So that creates the data value that we speak about. So one is, for example, you take a customer, you look at their orders, you look at invoicing, and you start building this picture around who that customer is. And that's the information and the value you start building around what data actually becomes for you as an organization. And again, doing that in an holistic, uniform, or standardized way is a way for you to achieve your goals. If you can't get that right, you're going to be answering different. You're going to be answering the same question differently to different parts of the business. So hence why, if you understand the data, understand how that turns into information of what that organization needs to achieve its goal, that is where we need to try and get to, and that's the golden thread of, or the value stream of data that AI will actually need to build something of value for your business.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Thank you for helping us with that definition there. So in terms of the concept of data sovereignty, that's a sort of topic that I'm hearing a lot more of now. So the importance of companies being able to have their own data in a server or on the cloud or in some sort of format that they control, and they know that there's no leakage, there's no security, there's no privacy risks around that data, because it's kind of, how they do it. They just know that it's got to be secure. And then the importance of that for AI powered tools, and what's coming next as well. So is that an area that you're looking at helping companies with their sort of data sovereignty as well?
Yes, of course. So I guess data security has become quite an important topic these days. Obviously, when we start handing off data to LLMs or processing engines, containing that data and ensuring that we still maintain control of that data has become very important. So yes, indeed, looking at how do we ensure that data becomes or is an asset for you, and how do you protect that asset, and that's going to be quite critical in terms of how do we address sharing of that data, creating a marketplace of that data, and also expanding on that data with different partners in an ecosystem where you create more value with that data. But essentially, getting to grips and understanding how do you manage that data, we can help obviously build those mechanisms and controls in place for ensuring that that data doesn't become what shall I say, exposed or land up in the wrong hands to create nefarious actions beyond that.
Yeah, and increasingly that is an area which I think is becoming very much an additional risk around that security. I mean, we've seen all of the conversations over the last few weeks around Mythos and other models, and the way in which companies, organizations, governments, banks are now extremely concerned about the impact that that's going to have. I think both upon the risk of getting into those databases to access that, but also then the ability to sort of, I think, like crack and hack into some of those systems on a longer term, and then sort of actually have a sort of a malign impact on how those systems are going to be built. So is this one of the sort of key trends that you're seeing, and companies you're talking to sort of actively sort of trying to find solutions around how they can better keep their data secure?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's also part of what we've been building in terms of tools for Hark Labs, which is, I guess, a construct of from Hark Consultants. So we look at different researches and areas of focus for ensuring that data is managed effectively within the organization. So we look at data security. We ensure that whatever data is being used within the organization, how it's classified, how it needs to be exported, all of those type of things. We build these controls around that, and the methodology for clients to ensure that whenever they do use the data, and whenever they're going to be sharing it across different areas of the organization, but also external to third parties, these are the areas that needs to be focused on, and the controls that govern that that we definitely push through with our clients.
Right. And this kind of sort of ties into sort of responsible AI governance as well. I mean, governance is an area that it's not a new area in itself, but I think in the age of AI, then governance has had to kind of adapt and look at some of the risks and challenges around how AI is being deployed. We've talked about quite a few of those areas, the risk, the security, privacy, etc. But what else do you think is important when we're looking at building a responsible AI approach, particularly with regards to data?
Yes, no, for sure. So what we currently do is look at the acceleration for the need of AI solutions, and what we currently consult with clients is that you've got existing governance structures, you've got existing areas of focus where you look at the legality and the framework of how you manage data. And what we work with clients is we work with them to do a maturity assessment of what those governance frameworks look like, and how we try and build the capability within is looking at where at least the decision trees would be applicable for managing data or AI in those regards. By that we mean updating data policies, updating tooling or introducing tooling where we need to understand for this data, for these AI solutions, how do we inject a bit more assurance, oversight to those solutions. And by that I mean we bake it within the solution. It's not an afterthought. So when you start developing or building the high-level views of these solutions, we ensure that responsible AI capabilities and also practices are built in from the start. So it's a full life cycle from start to end. So it's built on the project level, but also in your compliance and legal frameworks, where we need to inject all of these policies to ensure that with the usage of AI, it becomes so much fragmented in terms of usage thereof. And we always speak about unintended consequences, right? We need to block for that, and we need to control for those. And hence why we start building in those policies within across the life cycle of these solutions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think there's a few sort of members who are kind of working in similar related spaces that I'd love to introduce you to, because I think between what you've explained there and some of the other approaches to AI governance, and particularly responsible AI governance, what we're starting to see emerge is sort of like an industry in its own right. So it's not just AI governance, it's responsible AI governance, and looking in around like that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, yeah, of course. And we built a tool around that as well, looking at the maturity assessment, looking at how you build up those policy documents. Where do you inject it? Where do you inform it into your decision trees? All of those governance models. We can easily feed it into the tool, and it provides these outputs for you. And it's built on well-known ISO and NIST frameworks that's governed across those areas. And of course, learned experience with customers already. What do we know in terms of the industry? And that's all encapsulated in the tool set.
Fantastic. Just for listeners who might not be familiar with some of those standards you mentioned NIST, the North American Institute for Science Technology.
So technology and that.
And then ISO, which is obviously the International Standard Organization. Could you just explain a little bit more about kind of why those are important, those kind of standards, and what you're doing with them?
Yeah, of course. I guess if we want to ensure AI solutions in a general standardized way, we need to conform to something, right? Because all of us can build our own solutions and we arrive at different answers. This way, it just creates a bit of a framework and a bit of a governance in terms of how do we address it, ensuring that wherever we apply this, it is industry specific, but it aligns to some sort of framework that we know will give you consistent answers, consistent outputs that is applicable to the industry and whatever applicable AI standards would apply to. So in essence, it just ensures that our assurance is assured within the framework, making it standardized and governed in an authoritative way.
Thank you for explaining that. And my understanding is that some of those standards are they're great. They're sort of, they're global in the, the way they sort of operate. But are they more the sort of foundations? And do they cover the type of thing that we've been discussing, this more sort of responsible AI, looking at the sort of the ethics and that sort of like broader AI governance, or do they just cover the more sort of technical side of interoperability and standards?
Yeah, well, I guess it's a mix of how you take and apply of those inputs. I guess for me, it's looking at how do we look at the applicability of the use cases within the current state and the current client case that you're building within. I think you need to just use those as guardrails and the framework for you to help you build up what the client needs and how it applies to what the client case is at the moment. So it is quite important on both fronts. That informs the output that you really want to get to.
Yeah. No, it's useful to have that sort of that picture there. Thank you. So as we start to kind of come to a close here, I just wanted to get your perspective on, as you look forward to 2026, which is, we've got the rest of the year left. Who knows what's going to happen, right, in terms of new models being released and all sort of things coming up. What are the things that you're most excited about? Whether that be from a regulatory perspective, from a data perspective, or from an AI perspective. What are the standout things that you're expecting to see this year?
Yeah, well, for me, I'm quite excited with working with clients and getting them to understand the value of data these days, because they're starting to see how important getting your foundational elements in place is to ensure that you get AI to scale effectively across the organization and not just in pockets. That's the one area. The other one is, of course, agentic AI. I think there's no way to get around that at the moment. It's just ensuring that we build the right capabilities. So when you do get to your agentic AI playbook, or at least your ideation for creating agents within your organizations, those goals that you want to achieve with these agents, if you have the right foundations, if you have the right levels of ownership within your organization, I think those are the two areas where I'm quite excited about. So yeah, it's good. It's, as you're saying, 2026 it's nearly done, isn't it? But it's moving so fast. But if you get those two right, I think scaling and getting the agentic AI narrative would be a good win for organizations and clients alike.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a good shout. And I think, we're really just at the beginning of agentic, aren't we? In terms of there's so much which is happening all the time in that space and being built, and we've only just really seen new tools like OpenClaw come on and start to take on things like that. So a lot more to happen there. How can we follow what's happening at Hark and sort of see what's coming next with you? Is there a good place where we can sort of log on and find out more?
Yes, no, of course. So firstly, you could visit harkconsultants.com. That's the website where you can understand what we do, all our offerings and our services, and get a bit more detail in terms of what we just described. You can definitely delve into the site there, and it gives you all the information you'd need. Also, Hark Labs will be available on the site, and that gives you a bit more detail in the tooling that I've described as well. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. And you can find me and search for me there. Also, another area is I've written a few research publications on how you scale AI, as well, responsible AI capabilities on that as well. And most importantly, I've written a book on data and AI, where it's I try to make it quite conversational. I think you started the conversation saying that data is such a boring subject, but this book just tries to bring that about, where it's more conversational and more friendly. It's a group of people sitting in a coffee shop speaking about data, all the different elements, data governance, data management, even agentic AI. So just making it conversational, bringing it up to a level where it's a bit relatable to people. So those are the areas where you can contact us and contact me. So hopefully those channels would be good for you.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing those. Yeah, we'll be sure to check those out. And we look forward to getting you back in maybe later in the year to talk about how those have progressed and
No, of
find out
course.
more about how all of those have been engaged. So no, that's great. We've had a really interesting conversation there. Thank you for talking us through how the data landscape has been changing over the last few years and how it's really accelerated. I think we both agree on the importance of that foundational data to really unlock the potential of what those AI-powered tools can deliver. So that was really interesting to go through all of that. But we covered quite a bit of ground as well, I think, in terms of setting out some of those AI governance frameworks and how it's not just about sort of the tick boxes and the technical standards. Actually, it's really important to understand the responsible AI frameworks and how that sort of sits on top of those governance frameworks. And then the sort of the importance of, as an industry, coming together to help understand and educate organizations on the importance of data and the importance of those standards as well. And it sounds like you're very much the cutting edge of that with your maturity index that you're building there, which sounds great.
Yeah.
So Fuad, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity and look forward to catching up soon.